and welcome to yet another edition of the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris, here with my co-host and A to Z Sports Tennessee writer Zach Ragan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to our little show. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If that sounds like something you want to listen to regularly, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify, and subscribe there. If you subscribe, you won't miss a single episode when we drop them on Mondays, except this one's coming out yet again on a Tuesday. I'll explain in a second. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach and I write on the internet. Apologies for the second week in a row for being a day behind on recording. Zach had meetings and responsibilities and things to do. He's so important. So we had to delay a day. No, he really did. He had stuff to do. So we had to delay to Tuesday. But yet again, going to try to keep that to a minimum. But we'll get right down to brass tacks, talking balls here on the Big Orange Podcast. We'll start, as has become tradition since the season really began. We got to do the weekly baseball update because things are still amazing with Tennessee baseball. They go down to Gainesville and sweep Florida. And there has been so much of this season where this baseball team just breaks records. It seems like every single week, it's just like this Tennessee it's the greatest start in SEC baseball history. It's the this and this and this and this and this. This week, it was, I guess before they had the longest, I guess, start of consecutive wins in SEC history to begin, 12-0. Then they lost to Alabama finally. They have not lost an SEC game since. And now at 17-1 in the SEC, they have the best start in the history of SEC baseball. No team has ever gone 17-1 in SEC baseball. This team has now done it. And it just is every week with these guys. This was, I believe, the first sweep at Florida by an SEC team since 2006, I think, and the first sweep of any team since 2013, I want to say, is what I saw. It's absurd. It's totally absurd. It's almost boring at this point to talk about how crazy this team is. But Zach, did you watch much of the baseball team this weekend?
Yeah, so I was out of town again this weekend. I was in Charleston for my kid had a baseball tournament, but I was able to watch a good deal of Sunday's game on the way home. The internet was kind of spotty on the drive back, but it feels like every series something we haven't seen before, or just something that you can't believe happens. I mean, the week before it was Tony Vitello getting ejected and suspended for bumping an umpire as he was kind of defending his pitching coach and his players. And this weekend we see just a tremendous comeback. Top of the ninth, you're down to your last out, and they come back, tie the game, getting a couple tough spots in the bottom of the ninth, bottom of the 10th. They work around those, and they Christian Moore hits another hits a 2-run home run there to
Unbelievable.
Give Tennessee the lead. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then after the game, the drama that kind of popped up with the Florida football helmets. Every week you wonder, what else can this team do to make opposing fan bases hate them more? And every weekend they come through with something. It is amazing.
So they put on, the way that it was explained by Florida media is that Tennessee somehow got access to where these helmets, where Florida's football helmets are stored or something. Although these were like alternate helmets that aren't the regular.
They're not worn a lot. They usually wear the orange helmets, and these are, you see them from time to time.
These were, ironically, they were actually the helmets that Florida wore the last time Tennessee beat them in football. They were because Florida wore that goofy alternate uniform during that loss to Dobbs and the boys. But
I guess they went back to the football facility from the baseball facility to
yeah,
like shower and stuff before they,
that's
returned
that's
to
what they said. The
Knoxville.
showers or something. They had access to these helmets, and so the baseball players put these helmets on. They put them all over social media, and Florida fans, of course, their immediate reaction is, "Well, do we own you in football? You're gonna put on a football helmet. Let's talk about football." That was their immediate reaction. But you can, in that situation, go ahead, talk it up. Football. Well, you haven't beaten us in basketball in a long, long time. I think they did beat the basketball team once last year, but that was like the first time in like 4 years or something that they had beaten the basketball team. Baseball, you get swept. I mean, let's talk it up. We all know. I think Tennessee fans are at peace with the whole football thing with Florida. Obviously, every single year, that's the game we all want to win. But it is what it is at this point when you lose whatever it is, 14 of the last 15 or whatever absolutely horrific stat it is at this point. You know, so weep it up, Florida fans. That's too bad. If you don't like it, don't get swept. Don't blow a 4-0 lead in the ninth inning, or I guess it was a 4-1 lead in the ninth inning. But don't blow the lead and lose the game, and then we can't do that. Sorry, that's too bad.
Yeah, there was a Florida football player, Chief Borders, one of their linebackers, that tweeted, "You reap what you sow." He later deleted the tweet, which I don't know why you delete that, because I mean, I get it. If Florida came into Knoxville and swept Tennessee's baseball team and did the same thing, Tennessee fans would be livid, and you would hope that Tennessee's football players would take it personal and would, want to kind of get revenge on Florida in the regular season. So I understand if Florida players are kind of upset about it, but to delete the tweet, like, nah, leave it up there. I mean, the pictures of Tennessee's baseball players in the helmets aren't going anywhere. It's out there. Everybody knows it. They're not running from it. Tony Vitello didn't really chastise the team for it. I think he said that he would text Billy Napier, the Florida football coach, and kind of smooth anything over. It's just some guys having some fun after sweeping Florida. And Josh Heupel didn't care one bit. I mean, it's probably one of the best Josh Heupel sound bites I've heard since he's been at Tennessee, and he's had some good ones. But he talked about, or was asked by Jason Swain on WNML on Monday how he felt about it, and he's like, "Well, why would I be worried about it? They just swept Florida in Gainesville. They can do what they want down there." And then he said he hoped that they took a crayon to the helmet and drew all over it, which is, I can't imagine any previous Tennessee coach saying that at all. And it coming across as like just organic and fun. Like it wasn't forced. He's kind of laughing, kind of off the cuff. Didn't run from it at all. Didn't have any issues with it one bit. I loved it.
The last coach that would have done that for Tennessee, I mean, it would have been Kiffin.
Yeah. I mean, that is a Lane Kiffin comment, pretty much.
It really is. That's hilarious. I love it. Because there were Florida fans that were like, "Your baseball team's writing checks that the football team can't cash." Who cares? What does this have to do with football? Like, yeah, maybe it's bulletin board material, but is SEC football and just that rivalry not enough bulletin board material for your boys to get up? Were they going to come in snoozing to the Tennessee-Florida game this year? Like, what? I'm sorry. What are you talking about? Oh, they're going to pay for that when they're. Oh, well, that's, we haven't won since 2016. It wouldn't be anything new. I'm not, So as sad as that might be, but here is the fact with as far as that game goes, Tennessee will be the better football team, and then it's in Neyland Stadium, and I don't want to put that expectation on Heupel. I'm sure he gets it, but that's a game Tennessee should win. I can say that about that game if we have to talk about the Tennessee-Florida game already.
Do what now?
Did it go out? Oh,
yeah.
Stupid internet. So I just said that basically this is Tennessee's the better team in a general sense, and there really is no excuse. It's not like Heupel's going to get up if they lose to Florida after the game and be like, "Listen, I got to have a talk with Tony Vitello." That's not that's not going to happen. But Tennessee should be the better team. for that. If we have to talk about the Tennessee-Florida football game, Tennessee should be the better team. You got the better quarterback, and in a general sense, constructed right at Florida's level, if not better, and the game is in Neyland Stadium. I don't care what Tony Vitello did this weekend. There's really no excuse in terms of losing that game, but it's Florida, so if Tennessee does lose, it's Florida. I mean, let's all be honest here, you know?
Well, I don't. That rivalry doesn't need any extra fuel. There's nothing really that you can say or do that's going to make that game any more intense than it already is. I mean, I don't think there's anything about that that's like, oh, okay, well, now we've got this game circled. Like, no, Florida has it circled every year, even though they've dominated Tennessee this century. It's circled. They want to keep doing that. They don't want to lose to Tennessee. It's just like Tennessee doesn't want to lose to Kentucky or Vanderbilt. Those games are just as important. They're viewed as, it's almost I think when you get to the point where Florida is with Tennessee, where they've won, 15 out of 16 or however many it's been, it becomes almost more pressure on you to keep that going. Just like it is on the other team to, break that streak and end it. So I think it goes both ways there. But I don't think this is really going to have any impact on the game. It's just it's April. We probably won't even remember this hardly when September comes around because there's so much history to this game anyway. That's just a small footnote in it.
I mean, it's like saying when Grant and Admiral went to Florida and they win in Gainesville, and then they did the infamous moment of they go up to the Florida crowd and they're doing the Gator chomp. That we Tennessee fans love to reference. It's like if they walked away from that and Florida's football team was like, we're going to remember that your basketball team did that. No, you're not. Like this, it's so long from now. And you don't need any bulletin board. If you need bulletin board material to get up for that game, you're behind the eight ball. I would put it that way.
It'd be a little different if it was like Missouri or something like that, where maybe that's a game that you kind of sleepwalk into and you've pissed them off maybe back in the spring, and they're using that as motivation to beat Tennessee. That might be a little slightly different, but this is a non-issue when it comes to that. Just really fun and just a great example of Josh Heupel just being real.
I love that.
He can be awkward with his comments at time. He cannot say anything at all in some of his press conferences just because he doesn't really. He's not. I don't know. It's hard to explain. He's not trying to be someone he's not. I guess he's just himself. Whatever he sees in the moment, he's gonna say it. He's not gonna apologize for
it. That is a very real moment for a guy who is a big fan of coach speak, and that's what we're going to talk about in the second half of the show. But I'm not done with this part of the conversation quite yet. I mean, realistically, just to add on to the back end of this conversation, like other sports are what has kept the Florida-Tennessee rivalry heated for sure. Basketball being primary among them. I mean, Rick Barnes has had Florida's number from front to back almost his entire time at Tennessee. Like I said, he didn't lose to Florida for, I think, 3 full years. I'm remembering back before last season. I might be off on that, but it was something close to that. And so, Florida still hates Tennessee. This adds to that. This is good. Honestly, to me, This is great because it keeps that fire. You want Florida fans to not have that apathy that almost Alabama has with Tennessee. They beat Tennessee football so badly every year that they almost come in and they're just like, yeah, whatever. It's a Tennessee game. Like, you want to have that competitive fire. And if baseball keeps that alive through a rough patch for the football team, if basketball keeps alive, fine. Whatever you got to do, just don't let it become where they almost pity you. It's kind of, I mean, honestly, it's Tennessee with Vandy right now. Vandy stinks in everything. Even their baseball team's not that good this year. At least not right now. And so you kind of look at them and you go like, you guys sort of stink at everything. I'm not like, it's always fun to gloat over Vandy fans because they're annoying. But like, you come into games with them, especially in basketball and football, and you kind of go, oh, all right, this is going to be rough for you. Sorry. But we're gonna beat you down. This is the way that this is gonna happen, and it's just too bad. So I just don't let it get to that point with Florida. That's all I ask. Actually, it's not all I ask. Beat Florida this year. That's what I ask. But I don't this whole thing. Whatever, Florida fans, eat it up. You deserve it. Beat Tennessee if you don't like it, and that's kind of my take on the whole thing. I did think about this. This was like a stupid thought that I had in the last couple of days. In a sense, right now Tennessee is sort of the Elon Musk of college sports at the moment, because you're number one. You know, Elon, richest guy in the world. You're on top of the world. You're beating everybody. And then in some sense, Tennessee kind of owns Twitter, right? with the way that we keep receipts. Vol Twitter doesn't forget. And you know, it's in a weird roundabout way. Our is Tennessee the Elon Musk of college sports at the moment? That was, like I said, is a stupid thought I had. But
Did you see the Arkansas fan that was like talking trash when Florida was up 4-1, and he quoted a tweet, Florida tweet, I think. It said something like, "I love watching Tennessee implode," or something like that. I don't know. Of course, after Tennessee came back and won the game, that guy's mentions were very much alive with Tennessee fans letting him hear, about it. And he, like, to his credit, he took it, he owned it. He said, I am getting drugged by Vol Twitter and I deserve it. Let me have it. I
in a
did
sense, to my analogy there, I guess Arkansas fans are kind of the people who right now are like, I'm going to leave Twitter. I quit. I'm out of here if Elon Musk buys Twitter. Those are Arkansas fans at Tennessee right now, where they constantly, it doesn't matter what it is. You look anywhere, the SEC network posts like Tennessee baseball keeps breaking records or whatever, and just Arkansas fans in the comments are just like, they're not that Arkansas, the Hogs. It's unbelievable. They can't stop thinking about us. So they can continue to weep. That's not, again, sort of like Florida fans. It's not really our problem.
I will say my one other takeaway from Josh Heupel and Vitello and all that is, like, what I hope we don't take for granted what we're living through right now, because do you remember like the vibe with like Lane Kiffin and Bruce Pearl back in the late 2000s, just kind of how they were, maybe at basketball games together, football games, showing up to each other's events and stuff, kind of like that bromance going on where there was just so much energy around the program. This is like that same thing right now, especially between Heupel and Vitello. Like, I don't know if you saw the clip of where Heupel crashed Vitello's press conference, just kind of having some fun, asked him if he needed a left-handed relief pitcher. I think it was after he threw out the first pitch a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, there's video. He comes in, kind of walks through the back, and just kind of, after a reporter stops, he asks Vitello a question. He's like, "Hey, you need any left-handed middle relief help?" And they had a fun little back and forth there. And it's just little stuff like that just keeps morale up around campus, around the athletic department in general. And it's like Heupel said during his interview with Jason Swain yesterday, is that success breeds more success. And the more that you're seeing these other athletic teams succeed and win games, that it's contagious. It just kind of spreads throughout the whole campus, and everybody's kind of pulling for each other. You're seeing football players show up at baseball games. You're seeing basketball players show up at baseball games. Was it Uros Plavsic showed up with the fur coat for the Alabama series finale? So I hope we don't take for granted like this little dynamic that we're seeing between Heupel and Vitello, and to some extent Rick Barnes as well. It's such a great dynamic they have going on right now, and you're starting to live in the good times again. Don't take it for granted, and just enjoy this ride up the mountain that we're currently on.
I hope that Tennessee fans have learned from the last 15 years that when these times come, relish it. You won an SEC championship in basketball, and that was a rally, and every other program can kind of rally around that. Baseball is obviously, I mean, you don't want to talk about it, but like they're setting records left and right, and they look like one of the best college baseball teams ever. I said that last week. That analysis came from someone who wasn't a Tennessee homer. I saw somebody on the SEC network who was a college baseball analyst who said that this Tennessee baseball team might be the best college baseball team he has ever seen. So that's not just from me. And yeah, football moving up the hill. If football, I would say this really applies if football gets good again. If you have a 10-win season this year, like really dig in and appreciate what's going on. And like especially like Lord willing, this baseball season ends with a national championship, at minimum an SEC championship. Like bask in every single bit of this glory, because always remember how quickly it can go away. Always. That's not don't beat yourself down with it. Enjoy what's going on, with the thought behind your enjoyment being, I gotta give this 100% because it might be gone tomorrow. Just sort of that appreciation.
Yeah, you never know how long it's going to last. But I mean, it feels like, look, Vitello's not going anywhere. Heupel's not going anywhere. The basketball team's in a good spot. If they get football teams to 10 wins, like you kind of mentioned, I think that's a real sign that that program is like ready to take a serious step, and not like, oh, okay, I like the direction this is heading, but let's wait and see. You get to like wins with this roster, and I think you might have something really special on the way coming.
I think you really might, and it'll. If football could come back, you would really see the full fruition. Everything come to fruition around just how truly powerful Tennessee as a brand can be, as a brand, and I throw the fan base into that also, because you see it right now. I was going to bring this up later in the show, but it fits in this conversation at this point. TMZ, who's like based out of Los Angeles, like just a national brand, this weekend posted that Darius Rucker, Hootie of Hootie and the Blowfish, he is now a country artist, at a concert led a chant of F Tennessee, except it wasn't F. It was the whole word, at his concert, and TMZ posted about it. Because you know why? Because TMZ knows that talking about Tennessee moves the needle. Like, it's a nationally known thing that if you rile up Tennessee fans, you're gonna get the page views, you're gonna get talked about, you're gonna be able to be seen, because people like Tennessee has established itself in this way, even through these rough times. Although through the rough times, the things that Tennessee has gotten recognition about have been, rioting on campus and overthrowing a coaching hire. But you just really establish yourself through. It doesn't even matter if Tennessee is bad. This is going to be a powerful brand. And now Tennessee is getting better, and it's only going to become more of a absolute juggernaut. And I want to see that happen so badly. I want to see Tennessee great in the age of social media, because obviously you were great in the late 90s and social media didn't exist back then, and you were a great brand at that point. But the way that Tennessee has emerged in being so antagonistic and so just like crazy loyal and willing to go over the top as a fan base and a school, I need to see it happen. I need this team to be back on top of the college football world and complete bring everything together full circle. I want it so badly, because it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
It's funny that you mentioned on top of the college football world, because I was thinking while you were talking, if Darius Rucker said F Georgia, I don't think
Doesn't move the needle.
I don't think TMZ writes that article. I mean, you'll see stuff. You'd see stuff written on the internet about it, but not to the same level as what we saw with this, where he said F Tennessee. But I respect Darius Rucker for his fandom. He's a South Carolina guy. He's born in Charleston, went to South Carolina. He's always been a huge Gamecocks fan. And I always respect the music artists that carry that with them no matter where they go. Like, I am a South Carolina fan. I'm not going to change just because I'm playing in front of this crowd or that crowd. Now his chant or F Tennessee was in front of, it was in Columbia in front of a bunch of South Carolina fans. So he was playing to the crowd a little bit, I'm sure, but we've seen it, before. He's through and through a South Carolina guy. You see it from some other country artists as well that are in that world. Eric Church, a big UNC fan. Morgan Wallen, big Tennessee guy. No matter where
Yeah.
he's at, he's gonna have that Tennessee hat. Then you got Kenny Chesney.
Chesney, man, the worst. I
And
don't mind some of his songs. He's made a
right,
couple. He's made some good records.
I've been to several Kenny Chesney concerts in different places. I've seen him in Nashville, in North Carolina. Fun time. It's always a fun time. But that guy, wherever he's at, he is going to be on that bandwagon. We've seen videos of him with Tim Tebow in a Florida helmet. We've seen him with other. I've seen him like in an Arkansas helmet. Various NFL
Ugh.
teams. I mean, he has no. He's from East Tennessee. I'm sure that he's watching college football on a Saturday. He's pulling for Tennessee, right? I mean, I have no doubt about that. But at the same time, like, how deep is your fandom if you're willing to just play to whoever you're out there with? I know part of it's the entertainment business, but at the same time, like, you're from Tennessee. This fan base is a little different. They expect a little more loyalty than that. They expect you to go to Florida and refuse to put on that Florida helmet. They expect you to maybe sing Rocky Top at that concert in Gainesville that you're playing, or something like that. And he's just not that way. So I do kind of respect Darius Rucker for that, for staying true to who he is. But at the same time, it's a big fan base. Your career's kind of had a renaissance because of the country music industry that is based in Nashville.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a wise decision to make if you're Darius Rucker, because you're not just saying like F the Vols there, you're saying F the whole state in that
Yeah.
instance.
That was the thing. Like, you can be a South Carolina fan. That doesn't offend me at all. And I'm exactly with you. I respect you being a true South Carolina fan over being Chesney, who will put on an Alabama helmet, a Florida jersey, just the worst. I respect that so much more. But to go out and lead an F Tennessee chant and literally basically saying, like, F the hand that feeds me, because I mean, this is the mecca of country music with Nashville. All of the labels are based out of Music Row down there, and it's an interesting decision. I'd say that
Not a good
hey,
business decision.
I'm not sure I would do it, because yeah, you can, like you said, like Morgan Wallen. I've seen like interviews with that guy. He wears a Tennessee hat, Tennessee shirt. He tweeted something snarky at Lane Kiffin because Lane Kiffin was playing his song at practice, and he kind of came back and was like, had a quippy comeback. I don't mind that, but he's not going out and being like F South Carolina.
Well, we've seen other. I mean, there's other mainstream country artists. That those real commercial successes like the Jason Aldeans and Luke Bryan's. I mean, those guys are like Georgia boys, and they pull for Georgia, and they stay true to that. They didn't move to Tennessee and sell their fandom, but at the same time, they also understand who's paying the bills, and they're not. Man. They know a little. They're a little smarter than to go out and disparage Tennessee in front of a bunch of cell phone cameras. They're going to put it all over the internet.
Yeah, not sure what he was thinking with that one, but it's over now. You did it.
Yeah, it's done. It's there forever.
It'll be an interesting visit the next time he comes knocks. He's a pretty big. He's a pretty big artist.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm sure he would probably hear. I don't know if he would do Thompson Bowling. That's probably a little bit too. I might be wrong there. Maybe he does do Thompson Bowling Arena.
I don't.
But
I'm sure Knoxville would be a stop on the tour. I mean, that's a pretty popular stop for country music artists.
Yeah, we get as far as country music goes, we get everybody, and they sell out. Any of the big country folks, we definitely get here. So that'd be an interesting stop when he comes back around. And I do have to throw in at the end that he truly defiled one of the great Americana songs of all time in Wagon Wheel, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive him for that. But outside of that, I don't.
It's always such a disappointment if you're at like a bar or something and they play his version of it. It's
I mean, Didn't he like change the words in part
Well,
of
that
it?
was
Just don't.
yeah, that was in the video as well. I don't know if you saw that him singing "Wagon Wheel," and they get to the part that talks about the heading west to Johnson City. I guess what they say, even though it should be east. But then they said F Tennessee. They kind of changed the lyrics. The crowd did kind of to say F Tennessee throughout the course of that song as well. So that's just another strike there for him.
We do not forget. We
Oh
do not
no.
forgive
Can
Darius
you
Rucker.
imagine his Twitter mentions if Tennessee beats football this year? Oh my goodness.
But that's the main thing with this is like, who do you think you are? You haven't beaten Tennessee football in 3 years. You haven't beaten Tennessee basketball in probably the same amount of time. You just got swept in baseball. It's like, what do we have to do to shut you up? Like, who do you think that you are? You have literally not beaten Tennessee in anything. I guess women's basketball. Okay, fine. You did. You
Oh
won the
yeah,
national
they
championship
were
in women's
celebrating.
basketball.
Yeah, they were celebrating the championship. I guess that was
But
the whole point.
to be celebrating your national championship, you won the national championship,
And you're still thinking about Tennessee.
and you're still thinking about Tennessee. What are you
There's
doing?
never going to be like Morgan Wallen or one of those other artists we talked about. It's a big Tennessee fan. Is not going to be at a concert in Knoxville and say F South Carolina.
Never.
They would not care one bit about South Carolina. Maybe Alabama or Florida or something like that, but you're not going to say anything about South Carolina. Nobody cares.
It's that like meme clip from Mad Men where the guy says to this is Don Draper, the main character. The guy says, "I feel sorry for you," and then Don Draper says, "I don't think about you at all." That's to Tennessee.
Yep.
It's Don Draper in that situation. South Carolina, I feel bad for you. We won a national championship. I feel bad for you. I don't think about you at all. Like South Carolina, we beat you in everything. That's not you're not my problem.
I feel like South Carolina, if you're ranking Tennessee's SEC East rivals, I think it goes Florida number 1, Georgia number 2, and then I feel like probably Vanderbilt's in there because it's the in-state rivalry and it's so important that you beat them. Even though it's not really a rivalry,
I think
it's
Kentucky,
still like
them in Kentucky probably. I don't know.
like you want to go to their stadium and fill it with orange and kill them. And you really care about dominating that game. And I feel like Kentucky, like you said, is kind of right there too because of the past success. And then I feel like Missouri and South Carolina are just kind of there. It's like, yeah, we're gonna beat them. It's not. Yeah, we're not really that passionate about arguing with this fan base, though. They are who they are. Like Missouri's probably at the very bottom, but I feel like South Carolina's pretty close.
Missouri is just, as far as the fan base goes, they've just kind of given up. Anytime I tweet
Forget
something
they even
inflammatory about
exist.
Missouri,
They're like the Kansas City Royals of the SEC.
I tweet somewhat commonly about how I want Missouri kicked out of the SEC. It's a passion project of mine. I want them gone. I think they're a leech who does nothing. They provide nothing to the league. And they should be out of here because there are so many better schools that we could replace them with. I tweet about that unabashedly. I don't care what they think. And nobody ever. There's no Missouri fan that comes back and is like, but we. They don't. They don't care. If I tweeted that about South Carolina, at least I will give them this. If I tweeted that about South Carolina, get out of the SEC. We don't want you anymore. Bring in Clemson. And we'd rather have Clemson. They're more competitive in football. They, whatever I might say, South Carolina fans would be all over me all day long for 2 days. And Missouri fans are just giving up, man. Another reason why they should be kicked out of the SEC, frankly. But yeah,
that was one of the worst additions. Texas A&M, I understand. I feel like they feel like an SEC team, and it's been what 10 years now since that happened. Whenever they moved to the SEC, them in Missouri, and Texas A&M, it feels natural. Like it just feels like okay, that makes sense. Missouri never ever has. They still always feel like a Big 12 school to me, and it's
Very
so
much so.
far away. It's you can't really get there from anywhere very easily. It's just it makes no sense.
Well, they still
and they shouldn't be in the East either. That's
probably the stupidest part of all of it.
Yeah.
But I still see Missouri fans when Kansas loses at something, they still tweet about that. And they're like, Kansas. And like, dude, you're in the SEC. You see a lot Texas A&M fans, they do that to a certain extent with Texas, but a lot of theirs that I see is we're in the SEC, you're
it's
not.
Alabama, it's LSU. I mean, that's who they're worried about now. Auburn.
Exactly. They've kind of left that in the past. Now it's going to come back around with Texas coming into the SEC, but as of now, they're like, we're here, you're over in this joke league. Who cares? And Missouri is still like, Kansas, let's laugh at them, because they can't laugh at anybody in the SEC.
And anything but basketball anyway. Football, certainly not.
Yeah. Whatever makes you feel better, I guess. I don't know, but it's, again, just get them out of here. We don't need them. Just Vandy too. I know some Tennessee fans, they don't like that because they're the big rival.
It's an eighth or however many home game. It's an extra home game every other year for Tennessee.
That's true. And so I guess you can take it as that it's a built-in win most years for Tennessee football. That's nice. But they don't bring anything to the SEC, and they're not an SEC caliber athletic program. Anywho, I could rant on that for forever. Again, passion project of mine, but one day I will succeed. Do want to move now. We've talked we had plenty of football talk already, so that's good, I guess. But this is the latter half of the show is going to be more football talk, specifically about Josh Heupel. Last week we talked about Tony Vitello's interview on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. Taylor Lewan, Will Compton on the Barstool Network. Tony Vitello went on, had a great interview, and we talked about it last week, and go listen to that on last week's episode. They also did an interview with Josh Heupel. When we did our episode last week, that interview had not come out yet. It came out like later that day, annoyingly.
I think so,
yeah, like right as I dropped our show, that episode of Bussin' with the Boys came out. So I listened to this episode with Josh Heupel, and a couple of things really stuck out to me that I want to talk about here in the second half of the show. And first among them is something we already kind of mentioned, is getting these real moments out of Josh Heupel, because he gets up at press conferences and he's very coach speaky. And I don't blame him at all. You kind of would be. You just kind of stay sort of guarded. You don't want to be, you don't really have a reason to go out with the media and be super chummy. I don't, some coaches love doing that. And then other coaches are just like, get me out of here. I don't really want to be here. Heupel's kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, he's polite and he's not misleading. He's just not going to tell you. And he's said that before. Like, I'm just not going to address that right now.
He's kind of a get up, get it over with, and then we're out of here. Like it's kind of just a required part of the job. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be professional about it. But
he seems more at ease, and it's something we've mentioned before, but the interviews where he is talking and there's a former player involved, he just seems more relaxed.
Yes. So this is where I'm going. You exactly led me right where I wanted to go. So he's with two former football Luan is still a football player in the NFL. I guess technically Will Compton is too, but he's not the same.
Is that Luan's primary vocation, you would say, football player, or is it podcast host?
Yeah, that's up for debate, frankly. As a Titans fan, I have some opinions on that, but that's for another show. But Luan, like, I don't know. Compton hops all over the league. He technically still plays, but does he really? He really, his primary vocation for sure.
Like he leaves and comes back to the Titans for a little bit and then just leaves again.
Vrabel like gives him a pity spot on the roster.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he's talking to two football players, Heupel, in this interview, and he has this moment in particular that struck me as, I would say, one of the realest moments I've heard from him. And I just want to play it, and I'll explain why after the clip, but let's just listen to it first. So here's Heupel on Bus with the Boys.
Fuck, man, it's 22 years ago. 22 years, so really not that new. Right.
Yeah, but you ain't got to date me like that. You know what
I mean? I'm a
young coach.
Consensus All-American?
Yeah, bro. You used to slinging around at Oklahoma.
National championship winner?
Yeah.
For the Sooners?
Used to be able to throw it around. Can still throw it a little bit out there on the practice field every once in a while.
Do you mix it up out there with them?
Not when it's live action, certainly not. But Thursdays or Fridays, which our tempos are a little bit down, I'll play catch with those guys. Do a little fat and slow, a little pat and go action on Fridays. With
Nice. You got to give the big guys a chance to catch the ball.
Have a little fun. They got to touch the ball too, right?
Now, do you guys have anything in the playbook right now?
So that it's a simple moment in this show, but he's talking about something that none of us have ever seen. He gets out there and he gets in it with these dudes, throws the ball around. And I don't know to what extent he participates in these drills, but he kind of makes it sound like he does. I don't know. But like the media doesn't get to see that. And this moment says to me, I think I suspected this for sure, but I think he's really he's a player's coach. We've talked about it, or it gets talked about with like Mike Vrabel. Like Mike Vrabel will literally, in front of media, he will get in and like run a drill with his dudes. It's kind of a sort of gimmicky thing that he does, but his players love it with Mike Vrabel. And Heupel here, obviously former player, national championship winning quarterback. He's still relatively young. And he'll mix it up with his dudes. And players love that. And in this moment, he kind of drops the coach speak. He kind of, says, we'll go out and run that fat and slow. He gives it sort of that player lingo. And I guess I just noticed in my time doing media full time, I interacted a lot with Tennessee football players. I interacted a lot with former Tennessee football players. Got to interview, talk to, just be in touch with those guys a decent amount. And this was really Heupel just talking on a level with a dude who also plays football. And I loved it. It was a very quickly, very brief, but like a shield down moment. It didn't feel like it was just a media, I'm talking, doing an interview. He's actually, like, I feel like he would have said that the exact same way off camera, just saying that to Taylor Lewan. And we haven't gotten to see much of that from Heupel. And I love this. I think it's great.
Well, they speak the same language, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you listen to that whole interview, there's multiple moments where they're speaking a language that's not familiar to us. I mean, these guys all played high-level college football in major conferences. Heupel spent a little bit of time in the NFL, and they talked about some of that as well. But it's just, I mean, it's a different language where they connect, and Heupel spent a lot of time in locker rooms playing and as a young coach. So, of course, he's going to connect with those guys a little better. But as far as him getting out on the field, I think, like, obviously there's different paths that you can take to being a successful head coach. And we've seen, or a football coach in general, we've seen lots of different coaches take different paths as far as their playing career and how they got to be a head coach and maybe the SEC. I think Heupel, just his team knowing, hey, this guy won a national championship as a quarterback. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. Not only has he been a good head coach or good offensive mind, he's also done it. Like, he's not asking us to do something that he hasn't went out there and done. And you don't always have to have that. I mean, David Cutcliffe, for example, didn't play college football, was a great coordinator at Tennessee, did a really good job at Duke for, over a decade. He didn't necessarily need that. That's not what he needed to connect with the team. For Heupel, I think coming into this situation, that's been very important because you had a roster that's been through a lot of stuff. Some of them have played for two different head coaches, been a lot of toxic environments that they've been a part of at Tennessee. So for them to trust Heupel, I mean, look at somebody like Matthew Butler that played for Butch Jones, went through all of that coaching change, then played for Jeremy Pruitt. Everything he saw the last 3 years under Pruitt, be very easy for Matthew Butler or another one of those guys to be like, all right, why is this guy going to be any different than the last two that I've seen here? There's no reason for me to think that. But then he kind of comes in there and he's on the field with you doing things a little bit different. I think it just makes it easier for players to trust Heupel because of that.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about it. That's why this moment stuck out to me, even with how short, sort of simple and short as it was. It was meaningful in what it said about Heupel and what he doesn't show publicly. I mean, I guess you've maybe seen it some in like hype videos that they put out. They put out sort of like a day in the life of Josh Heupel and stuff like that. But even still, you're not seeing an entire practice. and seeing how he interacts with these guys for 3 hours at a time and what happens out there, and the respect that comes with having a coach who was you at one point. I think that's a huge element, because he can say, like, I've been there. I've been in your shoes. Yeah, it was 1999, 2000, but like, I've done it, and it is massive, and it's a camaraderie that if you haven't played college football, you can't understand fully. And I haven't. I've just interacted with a lot of people who have played college football. Like, it's a sort of talk, like when I was around some of those older players when I did Swain's show, they all of them, like across the board, they refer to each other as little bro, big bro, if you're older or younger. And it's like that sort of thing that it's like nobody who didn't play college football is calling Albert Hainsworth little bro. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that sort of thing. And just to see that from Heupel, I think it's meaningful. I think it's a cool moment. And I like that these guys got that out of him, because we just don't see it with the traditional press conferences that he does here, where he just gets up, answers the questions. Well, I thought practice was, we gave great effort today, and just that kind of stuff that you go out and say. And there was a decent amount of that in this interview. He still stayed decently.
He knows
guarded.
He knows what he can say and not say,
Yeah.
and when to go with a story and when not to. But he's a funny guy. He has a good sense of humor.
Mhm.
You don't see it a lot, but you do hear it at times. And when he told a recruiting story about his Escalade getting, or his Cadillac getting stripped while he was checking out a recruit, and had to drive around with no hubcaps and stuff for a couple of weeks after that. And he's laughing, telling a great story. And it's just little moments like that where he kind of lets his guard down, and you see the way he interacts with those guys. It kind of makes you feel like he does the same thing with his team. I think it's especially important with Hendon Hooker and the quarterbacks that Heupel, they know that he's been in those situations. He's been in the most pressure-packed situation you can possibly be in as a college football quarterback, trying to lead a team to a national championship in 2000 when it was a little bit harder because you had the BCS. You had to be in the top 2 to compete for a national championship. You're feeling that pressure all year long. He went through it. He succeeded, won the national championship. So the fact that he's been in those situations, quarterback like Hendon Hooker, the other guys on the roster, it's a lot easier, I feel like, to trust your head coach in those moments when you know that he's been there and faced that before. Like, he's going to lead you in the right direction. That's just another element too that I think is really, really a positive for Tennessee.
Absolutely. I like it a lot. That was just one of the moments that stuck out to me. Another one was this. He actually wasn't asked directly about NIL, but he brought it up, and obviously that has been a huge story around Josh Heupel. And you can kind of, I would actually add this to what we were saying there with Nico Iamaleava committing to Tennessee. Huge story. The $8 million supposed deal, NIL deal for him. I think you can say of Heupel, if he is not who he is, $8 million talks. But Nico is the elite of the elite in this recruiting class. He was gonna get a sweet deal no matter where he went. It didn't matter. If Heupel is not who Heupel is, he's not coming to Tennessee, even still. There was more to that decision than just like, oh, here's this fat NIL deal that comes along with this commitment. And so to just throw that in there, I think that you can say that it's, especially that deal with Nico, Heupel is a part of that, being a former quarterback and the way that he can relate, and the fact that Nico, I think, sees a guy who can be a real mentor and leader, and that it's big. It's getting you huge recruits. So that's, what more do you really need to say at that point? So just to put an exclamation point on that. But the other thing that stuck out to me in this interview was this moment where he talks about NIL in a broad sense, And I just want to touch on it briefly because I liked what he said here. So here is that moment on Bustin' with the Boys.
Do you think it gives these kids an opportunity to kind of say, okay, there are other avenues I can take other than football to make relationships and get jobs and kind of shrinking that anxiety that you kind of get when you have to transition?
I think one of the great things about NIL is that it has forced kids to understand that they have a brand and image, and the choices that they make transitioning into college football, have a huge impact on their future and potential earning power. The issues that maybe I've had to deal with previously as a head coach, man, very few of those things are showing up right now because they are so understanding and have a global view of what they're trying to accomplish. It changes the mindset. It changes the opportunities.
I think it's an amazing point that doesn't get brought up enough with NIL. I think there's a lot of people who think that the NIL's rules are going to change football, and it certainly is going to change college football. It already has. But they're going to change it for the worse. And I think what he brings up here, first of all, shows that clearly he's a huge proponent of NIL. And in this new age, that's massive and amazing. And I think it's a very good sign for Tennessee that he's 100% behind it in the way that he is. But the point that he brings up here, I think, is excellent in that college football, if you don't know how these players live, it's extremely insular. College football players do not live like a regular college student. They do not get an education like a regular college student. Frankly, they work with tutors, and Tennessee has an entire devoted department, essentially, that works with athletes to get them the education. And he says that the NIL really forces onto these kids things like being like fiscally responsible, knowing what your worth is. He says it there, knowing what your brand is and your market value, kind of, and what comes along with that. Like ESPN made a whole documentary. It's a great movie called Broke, about how so many pro athletes don't know how to manage money. And so they get millions of dollars and then it disappears in an instant. And this type of thing brings an education before you ever get sent out fully into that real world. You go like, oh, well, I made $50,000 in college. I know what taxes are. I know what that means. I know what my worth is, what my brand is, what I can build on. And to hear that from Tennessee's coaches is amazing and encouraging. But I also think, just in a general sense, with that NIL conversation, it's a great point. And it is a huge pro that I don't think that I had totally thought about with the new NIL rules.
I hadn't really thought about it either, and it's definitely a great point. The thing that I thought when I first heard the comments, aside from it's a great point, is what a different attitude Heupel has towards NIL than other coaches.
Yeah.
Because you've heard Lane Kiffin complaining about NIL stuff. We've certainly heard Dabo Swinney at Clemson very loud, complaining very against the NIL stuff. Well, he claims he's for it in a sense, but you can tell he doesn't like it at all. Even Nick Saban at Alabama, who his players are profiting from NIL, he's kind of talking out both sides of his mouth a little bit, where he's kind of downing NIL a little bit, but also bragging about how much his players are making. I mean, I think last week, I don't know if you heard or not, he made a comment about the collectives that are starting up. You know, Tennessee has a couple of it that have started other programs. They're really popping up all over the place now. And Saban made a comment that, well, Alabama we haven't had to use collectives for our players to earn a lot of money, and they've earned as much as anybody in the country. He might have even said they've earned more than anybody in the country. So he's kind of bragging about their players earning money, but doing it in different ways, whatever. But Heupel, he hasn't really engaged in any of that. I mean, he kind of rolls with the punches, like, hey, this is what it is. Not really going to talk great about it, bad about it. It just is what it is. And he brings up this great point where it's like, okay, you're looking for the positives out of this. Like, that's nice to hear, because you don't hear that from college football coaches a lot. And it's very annoying to hear coaches like Dabo and Kiffin rail against NIL when, like you said, it's here. It's not going anywhere. This is the new way of college football. Sitting there being negative about it and preaching against it is not going to change anything. It just makes you look worse, probably, on the recruiting trail, it's nice to hear Heupel not take that approach.
It's a great point. So much of the conversation around NIL has been the negatives. Yeah, we all get it. It's not ideal. And frankly, like to me, in an ideal world, college football is just the semi-pro league that it is. It's the feeder league to the NFL. It's a development league. And I think at the end of the day, we really all understand that, and we have different levels of acceptance in terms of, what college football really is. And that's an ideal world. But so many people just want it to go back to this. It's all about, you get a scholarship and an education and you leave with a degree, and that should be, and you want to play for the name on your jersey. And it just is, the toothpaste out of the tube. We're beyond that. And to hear the coach that represents the University of Tennessee have that attitude, where he just goes, toothpaste out of the tube. I'm not going to go out and be Jimbo Fisher, bitching and moaning about how whatever, literally all Jimbo does. I don't know if the guy coaches, because I feel like everything he does is just complain. That's all I ever see from him. And to have Heupel not do that, I'm sure he has these thoughts behind closed doors to whatever extent. Don't we all? But to just eschew all that and just go, I'm not going to touch any of that. Let's talk about the positives. Let's talk about what this brings to these players and how it makes their lives better and how it sort of rights a historical wrong in college sports. And then we're going to use it to our advantage to go out and get a kid like Nico Iamaleava, and he's going to come in and change his program. That's all I've ever wanted as far as this. I guess I didn't, until the last couple of years, I didn't know that this was what I wanted, maybe because I didn't know that this is how it would turn out. But this is exactly what I want to see. I didn't intend for this to become a showering down praise on Heupel session, but it is. When I see something good, I want to talk about it and bring it up and acknowledge it, and I think this is great.
Yeah, and look, I think we're all, especially us, where we've covered so many different Tennessee coaches. You're always looking for a red flag or something that Heupel, it's just not really showing itself. Maybe it will. I don't know. But I think something else this right here shows is just him as a problem solver, which is a character trait that a college football coach needs to have. You've got to recognize the problem and figure out how to deal with it. You can't dwell on why the problem's there, how it got there. I wish it wasn't there. It's there. Let's deal with it, make the best of it. And that's what he's doing. So I think that's kind of how he works on the football field too. I mean, that's the way he runs his offense. That's just a good trait to have as a coach.
I noted the clip as a whole didn't mean much, but I noted a quote that he said in this interview. He was talking about just Tennessee and coming to Tennessee, and he said that he was bringing a new age approach to an iconic brand. That's how he said it. A new age approach to an iconic brand. And I think that shows his entire mentality right there. He also said in that interview, he said, we want to be the most aggressive team in college football. And he emphasized in that, he said, I want it to be not just on offense, but it's the way that we coach on defense also, to be the most aggressive team in college football. He wants to be this cutting edge, no holds barred. I mean, we saw it last year, the roller coaster ride that is the way that this guy coaches. And I have my qualms with it. I don't think it's perfect. I think in a game like the Purdue game, it may have hurt you. But in the game like Kentucky, it's what won you the game. So it's a two-way street. And when it works, it works. And when it doesn't, it can hurt you too. But I just love this mentality, if for nothing else other than it is just cutting edge. Like, it just is a fresh, refreshing thing. And at the perfect time where Tennessee had just gotten so bogged down in, Fulmer as AD really brought this, like, I want to harken back to my time in the 90s and bring in a guy who reminds me of myself in Pruitt. And Tennessee just needed to just throw all of that off its back And this dude, obviously, this thing could turn out to not be great. Let's all acknowledge we haven't seen the results on the football field yet. But I will say it certainly feels like he is coming into Tennessee in the right place at the right time. And I am incredibly encouraged by what I hear in this dude's general philosophy and the way that he carries himself.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all I know.
This is the style that you have to win championships, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Jeremy Pruitt was a very mundane, risk-adverse coach. His offense was boring: run, pass, punt, and Pruitt fancied himself after Nick Saban, but they weren't really. He wanted the Nick Saban attitude and culture, but he didn't coach like Nick Saban. I mean, Nick Saban takes risk.
Yep.
He'll change his offense if he sees something's not working. We've talked about it before. He's already started doing that a little bit after watching Heupel. They've started going with some tempo. But he'll take risk with his coaching hires. He'll take risk with the way that he coaches. He's aggressive. He's not ultra conservative. It's a very Bill Belichick in the NFL is the same way. I mean, the New England Patriots, it's 4th and 5 on the 50. They get a first down, the game's over, or they punt it and they give you a chance. They're going to go for it. They're going to get the first down and they're going to end the game right there. They're not going to give you a chance. They're not going to put the ball in your hands. Pruitt, Butch Jones, Derek Dooley. I mean, it's really been since Lane Kiffin was in Knoxville that Tennessee's had a coach that kind of has this aggressive mentality, and that's really, look, it's going to bite you. It's going, especially if you don't have the elite talent. Until Tennessee has Alabama and Georgia level talent, there's going to be games like that Purdue game where it bites you and you lose maybe because of this approach. But I feel like you're going to win more games than you lose coaching this way.
Absolutely. I agree. Obviously, we'll have to see. Time will tell exactly where this goes. But I think Tennessee's in a great position with a coach that has the right mentality. And let's just go from here. That's really the point of this conversation. I liked what I heard here. There were some moments with Heupel that were a little more real than we've seen him be. And I just appreciate it. I want to see more of that, but I also don't blame him with kind of being guarded because that's the way college football coaches are a lot of the time.
I think he's a good balance. He's not out there on Twitter going crazy like Lane Kiffin, but he also lets his personality strategically come out a little bit here and there where, fans get to see it a little bit. And I think Tennessee's media department is pushing a little more of that. I was surprised that they even agreed to the Bussin' with the Boys interview, mainly because there's always so much controversy surrounding Barstool Sports and the connection between them and Bussin' with the Boys. It's under their brand. I was surprised. I was glad because you do get these candid moments in these interviews. I mean, it's behind the curtain. I mean, we got a ton of content out of the interviews that they did with Heupel and Vitello and Mike Eckler. It was enjoyable to listen to.
Really was.
And I think that's Tennessee's media department that understood that would be a good thing for the university. Like there's nothing really negative that's going to come from those interviews.
Yeah, I don't know. Even during the rough years, the media strategy at Tennessee was pretty solid. That was one thing that they've done pretty good for a long time. And I don't know exactly where that strategy comes from, if it's Tom Sakoyak or somebody. I know for some stuff, he's the brains of the operation, but he's more of a basketball
Well, he's
guy.
been the one constant there through the years, I guess.
Yeah, he has stayed for a really long time at this point, relative to the way that media operations people shift around a lot. I mean, it's a nomad's job. And Sakoyak's been there a long time. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's coming from Danny White, right? And I guess I should explain. We're talking about that in the way that we worked in media and know who Tom is. He is I'm not sure of his exact title at this point, but he's the SID, Sports Information Director for basketball. But at large for the athletic department,
yeah, I believe it's Bill Martin for football. Who's an LSU grad.
Maybe it's Martin too, but Martin just hasn't been here as long. I think he came from Mississippi State.
He graduated from LSU, and I think he was at Mississippi State before. I'm not positive.
Yeah. But whoever it is over there, if it's coming down from Danny White, I love it though. They just seem to get it, and they have for a long time.
Well, you certainly see you see it probably is a little bit with Danny White and a little bit with Josh Heupel too, because you see Heupel jumping on these shows. He was on with Swain yesterday. He was on with Jason Martin or Ramon Foster Monday morning. Jeremy Pruitt would do that. He jump on many radio interviews. Butch Jones was on a bunch of them quite often. He was like weekly on 104.5 in Nashville. So I think it has a lot to do with what the coach wants to do, and I think the athletic director that Tennessee has now has a lot to do with it as well.
Danny White is. We kind of had a conversation 2 episodes ago. It might have been the last episode, but where we've talked about how impressed we've been with Danny White so far. It's kind of skeptical coming in. He sort of seemed like he might try to be big shot guy. I know more than you do. Don't question me. Kind of a feeling at the beginning, and that really hasn't turned out to be the case. I think you brought it up last week. He doesn't perceive himself as the smartest guy in the room at all times, and it makes a huge difference. So
there's a lot of similarities between him and John Curry, just in, I don't know, their demeanors at times maybe, and just their past. I mean, they came up the same path. They're the same position, same type of people, really good at raising money, but that's the definite difference. That Curry had that smirk and that kind of air of arrogance surrounding him, which Danny White doesn't really have.
I'm gonna go to the Bahamas in the middle of a coaching search, like Curry did. Yeah. So whoever is leading that media charge, keep it up. You're doing great. You're doing really, really great. Just keep doing it. VFL Films is so good, man. They kill it over there.
Yeah, every time I'm always excited to watch that little behind the scenes video they did with Josh Heupel last week. Was 5 or 6 minutes of his day. I mean, that was another example of Heupel kind of being candid and real in those moments and just kind of explaining his day. Just stuff like that's fun for fans to see. It's fun for everybody to see because you don't get so very much of that in college football, not like you do in the NFL. Where, I mean, can you imagine them doing like a Hard Knocks with a college football team? I mean, it would be must-watch television if it was an SEC team. I would watch it if it was Mississippi State, well, especially Mississippi State with Mike Leach. But, I mean, that would be amazing because you don't get to see any of that with any of these programs at all.
But some people really criticize that openness, that it can be flashiness. I think you see with like Deion Sanders at Jackson State. Obviously, he tries to bring a flashiness, and I think he's even employed by Barstool Sports. I think Deion Sanders, he does a show on there. But either way, those coaches that realize the power in that, because the proof's in the pudding. Deion Sanders goes out and gets the #1 defensive recruit in America this last year to Jackson State. Huh? What? Like, there's so much power.
Money. Don't even mention money with that kid because you think that USC and all these other whoever else, Alabama, wasn't throwing money at him too?
He was getting money anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's power in that media push. You really can make a difference. I know some of the more traditional folks don't like the flashiness. This is the way of college football.
Well,
right
Butch Jones understood it, and he used it.
He did.
To his advantage, and it really helped in recruiting early on. His personality, he didn't have enough media savviness to understand how to use that as a tool to benefit him to the fullest extent, but he did understand the importance of it, and he was in front of a camera whenever he could be, and in his early years, it really helped Tennessee.
Well, and the main problem with Butch is that he would go and lie to these kids in their houses and basically be like, we're gonna center our entire offense around you, and then when they got there, that's not what would happen. And so please don't do that, Josh Heupel. I don't think Josh Heupel is doing that.
Well, you can't really do that now with the transfer portal because kids can sign and then leave immediately. Even your signature on signing day doesn't really mean that much anymore.
Nope, it really doesn't. And I don't envy the coaches.
That has to be very stressful to be a college football coach.
Yeah,
right now, and it is the very reason that we have seen Coach K, Roy Williams, and now Jay Wright all retire, especially Jay Wright. I mean, how old was he? Like we talked about this. He's
60.
like 60.
right
I mean,
at.
I mean, he's at the top of his profession, but it's become such a different job to where it is literally 24/7, 365, and it was already kind of to that extent, but you would kind of get a reprieve after signing day or off season. You didn't really have to deal with these roster management issues that they have to deal with now. And I think this is just my gut feeling, but I think we're going to see that from Nick Saban at some point, where it's just because you're seeing Alabama players, like talented Alabama players, like these players where that's how Alabama and Georgia have been so good, is because it's not because they have a first string of 5-star players. I mean, that's a big reason, of course. It's because they have the second and third string guys that come in when these injuries inevitably happen. A player goes down, transfers. You've got a guy to step up in their spot. And now Alabama's starting to lose some of those guys. There's a 4-star safety from Alabama that saw special teams action as a true freshman at Alabama. He hits the portal. It's probably a good player. I mean, you see in special teams action at Alabama as a true freshman, it's about as good as you can hope typically, because there's a junior that's on that roster that's starting in front of you. You're the next guy up. Well, now that guy's leaving. Who are they going to replace him with? I could see Saban getting frustrated with some of that and be like, all right, why am I still doing this?
I really do think it could harken the end of his time at Alabama quicker than it would have been.
Yeah.
I mean,
and to be fair, he's a different breed. He's not, he's a
cyborg.
You have to be a maniac to be that good.
Yeah. Lord knows he could probably still be there for another 20 years. I don't know.
Maybe I'm just trying to talk myself into this.
Yeah. He's closing in on 70, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. He's easily. He's born in the 50s. So,
yeah. Like at a point where I think it could turn on, he is 70. Where I think it could turn with him is what I think you're seeing with Tennessee getting a guy like Nico. This NIL thing moves players in a different way from before. It gives a school like Tennessee that, it stunk in football for a long time, but we got money. We got money and we got resources and we got power. And we got a huge loyal fan base that's attractive to kids and wants to get behind this program, even though it's been bad for a while. And Tennessee could not be in a more perfect spot. The more perfect spot would have been not sucking for 15 years. But if you're going to be rebuilding, Tennessee's in a perfect spot to take advantage of this NIL. They have the perfect coach to take advantage of it right now, where you have Heupel being absolutely shameless with it, setting up giant deals for these kids. Supposedly, asterisk, according to reports. And I think Saban starts losing some of these kids, and he starts going like, okay, maybe I'm, the iron grip is loosening. I'm gonna finally spend some time with the grandkids.
He's not going to stick around and go 12-2 in multiple years, which is crazy because that's a really good year. But for Alabama, that's not up to expectations. 11-2 or 12-2, 11-3. Yeah, he's not going to stick around for that.
No, and so I don't know, 4 years. That's what an entire recruiting cycle with NIL maybe.
I think that it'll be a Jay Wright type situation, Bruce Arians in the NFL, where it's just out of nowhere. I don't think it'll be a Coach K tour. I just think it'll be a very sudden, shocking, it'll be a very shocking moment that comes out of nowhere. And everybody's, or maybe like Bob Stoops, maybe in the middle of the summer or something, after one season or something.
I mean, K really showed the hazard of having the farewell tour. It's risky. If the season doesn't go the way that you want it, you're done. Mm-hmm. And the North Carolina just forever has that up on his legacy.
Twice.
He lost in the Final Four to North Carolina, and you can't Sorry, you're done. I mean, it was so egregious that people were like, well, he might come back. And like there was actual chatter about that. And so it's risky because I could see they win a national championship this year, next, some actual chatter about him bouncing out. I would say it wouldn't surprise me, but also what wouldn't surprise me is him coaching for another 10 years. So either outcome. I mean, the guy's a psycho. He's an absolute psycho. His brain doesn't work the way that a normal person's brain works. And so it could be national championship. See you later. Bye. Or he's going to be here till 2040. I don't know. So hopefully it's the first one. Because the real truth is, I mean, college football, the product is not going to get significantly better until he leaves the sport. I hate that because he is such a legend and he commands the respect that he does and will always be remembered probably as the greatest coach of all time. But he's hurting the game. Nobody wants to watch Alabama win every single year, always. They're so dominant, and it's boring. It's boring. Alabama fans are bored with it, and it's not good for the sport. And I mean, it's like UConn with women's basketball. It became boring. UConn won every single year, always, and it's not a compelling product. And so, unfortunately, that is the case. And not to wish Saban out of the sport, but I'm gonna wish Saban out of the sport. Get out of here. We don't need you anymore. The game is passing you by, Nick. Please, if you're listening, go ahead and retire.
You lost to Kirby Smart in the championship game. I mean,
it's over.
Yeah,
there's no coming back from that. Kirby Smart. He had a what would you call it? A pass-through loss to Butch Jones. Kirby Smart lost to Butch Jones. You lost to Kirby Smart. I mean, you can't ever come back from that. It's irreparable. So, all right, this is going really long. We were going to throw in right at the end. Tennessee basketball got a transfer. Tyreek Key from Indiana State, almost 15 points a game, 4.4 rebounds a game, 38% three-point shooter. He's kind of I think, not a fill-in for Kennedy Chandler, really BJ Edwards. I think they're hoping is going to be that guy, and Zakai Ziegler. But he's going to be a shooting guard. And an interesting piece to fill in there. Obviously, we're going so long, we don't need to go deep into it. And obviously, basketball is a long way off. But I think it's a good pickup. I do walk away from it still going, we got to get another big guy, or what's the plan there, Rick?
Brandon Huntley Hatfield announced his destination, right?
Yep.
Was it Louisville?
Thankfully, not going to Auburn. Thank goodness. I don't think he ever even ended up visiting. Went to Louisville. I think I said last week when we were talking about this, Louisville made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
New coach. He'll be a starter. I think it's a perfect situation, and it's out of the SEC, out of Tennessee's life. Just go play for Louisville, and then fine. I wish you the best of luck. You didn't go play for Bruce Pearl. God bless you. So I'm fine with it. But is still with that big man. Is Kamwa going to come back 100%? Is Jonas Idu is he going to take a big step forward? You're losing Fulkerson. Is Euros? I mean, are we hoping that Euros takes a huge step forward? Like, what is the plan?
Feels that way.
Maybe that is the case. Euros was coming more into his own. He became a pretty dang good rebounder in the latter half of that season. But he's never going to become a scorer for you. And it just takes away an entire element of the game, not being able to just dump the ball down inside and get points. I don't know, man.
He is great on social media. He is a tremendous follow.
I love him.
That.
Euros will leave Tennessee as a legend. I don't know that he'll ever put up gaudy numbers or anything like that, but he, like, going to the baseball game and wearing the fur coat. I mean, the dude's awesome. Yeah. He's so great. He gets it. Even despite being, the Serbian, expat. Like, this dude has embraced Tennessee.
Mhm.
I love it. But
Yeah.
Tennessee needs a real center to play. Not Uros is a real center. He is a real center, a real scoring center. Let me put asterisk on that. He needs a real scoring center that can rebound and score the basketball. And I don't know where they go to get that at this point. But maybe we do get big leaps forward from the players that Tennessee has. I think Huntley Hatfield left for a reason. So we'll see. So there's that with basketball. And I feel like I ended it negatively there. Good pickup for the team. I think it fills a need, and that's nice. Let's also work on getting a big guy. But Zach, anything else for the folks at home that we might not have mentioned?
I think that pretty much covers it for the week. It looks like we're not going to get a commitment today while we record this. So maybe next week.
Win as long as possible, as long as we possibly could.
Yes.
And yep, it just it hasn't fallen like the last few weeks where we get big commits in the middle of the show. But maybe we'll get them next week. We'll get them. We'll be back.
All right.
Hopefully next week, back on Monday. We'll be back on our regular schedule, and we'll go from there. Hopefully talking about another sweep. Tennessee baseball playing
Xavier on this evening, Tuesday.
Yep, and then a series. That's who it is. Auburn is coming to Knoxville, I believe, is the case.
Yes.
This coming weekend. So hopefully we're talking about another sweep of the old Tigers come Monday. Thank you so much to everybody for listening. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Ragan. And I don't have the music set up to end the show. Here it is. Thank you. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, A2ZSports.com, the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed, and YouTube. Go to the YouTube and type in A to Z Sports and get it there to see the show. I have come to this conclusion. I want to, in future episodes, do position breakdowns with clips from spring and fall practice, because we can do that now. We can get actual reps from these guys and show them on the show. And you won't be able to see them any other way unless you go to YouTube. A to Z Sports on YouTube. Subscribe. All right. That's it. Thanks for listening. Dang it. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but if I did, too bad. I'll mention it next week, and we'll talk to y'all then.
See you guys later.
Always